Hi, this is Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy. In the aftermath of Valentine's Day, we are going to talk about where we get our cheap thrills. Wow, it's our 20th episode. Yay! Talk about cheap thrills, Muffy. Yes, I'm getting my cheap thrill in the fact that it is our 20th recorded episode and we are still going strong. We have not missed a week since we started. I think it was October. You can remind me because I'm not quite sure, but yeah. Woo, our cheap thrills. Well, how was your Valentine's Day? My Valentine's Day was, yeah, somewhat uneventful. I mean, I've never been big into the Valentine's Day thing. I remember when I was living in DC and I didn't have a date, or maybe I was dating but we were living miles apart. I would be riding the metro and I'd see guys with balloons and flowers, and I just never really wanted that. And I aren't like huge, like we're not lovey-dovey expressionists, if that makes any sense. Like, we don't really hold hands. And I like it that way. I mean, we never have. The way we express our connection to one another is like on a more subtle level. Like, if we're talking to people and he's saying something, he'll be looking at me, and, like there's just like, I can feel that connection. So, anyways, I'm going off on a tangent, but maybe that's my cheap thrill, is the way that he looks at me when he's talking about whatever in a group with other people. So, yeah, cheap thrills. I mean, there's all kinds of cheap thrills, right? And I think it changes throughout time, especially from when, for me, at least from when I was younger to where I'm at now. When I was younger, I loved the romance novel. I mean, I could go through those things like it was a daytime soap opera. Like, I just loved eating that stuff up. And it was so fairy tale. Like, oh, the female in distress who's strong, but still she gets saved by the man. I mean, I wonder what romance novels are like today, because I can't imagine they're the same as when we were growing up, although they could be. Maybe I should check out like romance novels online or at the bookstore, although I still don't think they would be cheap thrills for me anymore. I don't know, it just changes. I don't know if that's, I think it's for the better. It sounds like maybe it's not, but the cheap thrills I get today, they're just different. And like, life isn't a fairy tale, right? It's reality. I mean, it is and it's not. I don't want to like squash anyone's hopes and dreams, but young love and passion is so different than older love and passion. I wouldn't say there's a ton of passion right now, but again, I think it's more of a deeper love. And that's the kind of passion that I have. And I'm okay with that. I don't need that young passion, a flutter. I just don't. I mean, some people may say they do, and that's perfectly fine, but I I revel in like the more deeper connections and things that, A and I have built in our lives, our family, our home, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the amazing. So, I don't know. I didn't think I'd be going in this direction with this episode, but yeah, my cheap thrills today, they're like in all the little things, right? Like, I think I told you, but there's this guy who at the local liquor store that I go to, it's called Varsity Liquors. And he's this young guy, and he's, behind the counter. He's the cash register. And he's not there all the time. And sometimes he's there on Sundays. Like, every once in a while, I'll go on a Sunday and pick up a bottle of wine, and he's there. And I swear, I just have this connection with him. I mean, I don't, but I feel this connection from him. Like, I feel like he kind of likes me or has like a little crush, but he's probably like young 20s, like somewhere in his 20s. So it's just so bizarre. I mean, I'm not at all attracted to him. I think he's a good-looking kid, but he's a kid. And I think he's cute, like in a kid kind of way cute. I think he could easily attract some woman much younger than me. But anyways, So it's like kind of like a cheap thrill because it's just kind of like I always walk away with a funny smile on my face. Like, other type of cheap thrills. I get cheap thrills from cleaning my room and it being all nice and tidy and organized, or my office. Like, to me, that's like thrilling. Maybe that's kind of sad, but it's kind of true. I get a cheap thrill like in giving a gift, like I don't know, there's something that just makes me so happy and it's a little bit thrilling. I know that you don't watch Friends, but there's an episode on Friends where Phoebe and Joey are having this competition about good deeds. And they're trying to one off each other. Like Phoebe will do something and see, like, no, see, this isn't a good deed, or this is a good deed, but it's good for me because I feel good about it. And so it's kind of the same thing, right? Like I feel good about giving a gift and it makes me thrilled. Yeah, for lack of a better word. But let's say, just going back to the cheap thrills from I don't know, from a more ooh la la standpoint, there's this old Chinese guy around our favorite store in my town, and every once in a while he's there and he's like, "Oh, you look so gorgeous." Like I'm not trying to imitate his voice. I don't know what his voice is at all, but he's always like so lavish with his compliments and how good looking. And I'll be like wearing my Ugg boots and a hat, and my hair's dirty, and I'm like it's so funny. I just laugh and I give him a big smile and say, "Thank you." Oh, I love this summer or last summer, you and I went with Jay and we went on a roller coaster. Man, talk about thrilling. Thrilling in a not so good way, right? I love the movie 50 Shades of Grey. I have to say, every once in a while, a guilty pleasure of mine is late at night when everyone's in bed. I will watch that just because I do think that's like the ultimate romance in a weird kind of way, I guess, right? You can debate that, or not you, but anybody can debate that. But yeah, that's kind of like my little guilty pleasure. I was looking up kind of the meaning of cheap thrills, and the literal meaning is to cause a sharp, exhilarating excitement in, or make shiver or tingle with excitement. And then there was another definition where it talked about cheap thrill where something's done with little effort or money. And the opposite, like, well, the cheap thrill, you think it's like a positive thing, could be a negative thing. It's such a cheap thrill, it's contemptible because it's low quality. So the cheap thrill is kind of interpreted as something negative. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, I guess that's true. Um, One could look at or view a cheap thrill as something like that's not very good or positive, like, I don't know, going to a nudie bar. Is that a something that might be looked down on as contemptible? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I think that's an interesting discussion for sure. Ah, but I kind of view like the cheap thrills as something just kind of fun and whimsical in a way, and just like something like getting a thrill out of the simple things. And again, maybe that's where I'm at in life. Just I want to cherish those simple things, and they're so exciting because I've gone through the, first time in love and getting engaged and getting married and having kids and all that fairy tale stuff. But at the end of the day, it's, who's cleaning up the kitchen? So, finding the cheap thrills in other things is very satisfying. I don't know if you know this, but I don't play cards very often, but I used to growing up all the time with my mom because she loved playing games. And she's a little bit of a card shark. Now, I'm a little bit of a card shark. And so when I win a card game, and I know that I typically will win a card game, I get like this very secret thrill that I've done it again. Now, the only person I can't seem to win against is my friend Kay. She is the ultimate card shark, especially when she's had a little too many drinks. It's amazing. I aspire to beat her someday. And let me tell you, it will be a cheap thrill. The other cheap thrill that I have secretly is there are these like like those road bumps, like some are very like herky-jerky, like if you go over them fast, it will really hurt your car. But there are others that are like a little bit softer, like they're kind of rounded and like they're modest. Well, I love driving over those bumps really fast because like my car gets a little bit of air and I just love it. So there's a specific road in my town where they have them, and I will purposely go just a little bit faster so I can get a little bump, like a little air, just a tiny little bit. And so it annoys me when people really slow down because they're really not effective bumps whatsoever. So I do get a thrill out of that. Or, I kind of get a thrill with driving. I can be an aggressive driver. And so on the highway, if I'm feeling in the mood, like a little aggressive driving, not over the top. Yeah, it's a cheap thrill for sure. So, going back to the Valentine's Day, I mean, you know, for us, every day, we live our Valentine every day of our lives. I mean, like, not every day is rosy, but like, when I think about Valentine's Day, sorry, I have a hard time saying Valentine. I always say Valentine. I don't know why. It's just that one word. So I find it funny. I'm trying, but I'm probably going to say Valentine's. When I think of Valentine's Day, I kind of think it's like that one special day for people that don't typically have it. But for A and I, every day is Valentine's Day, for better or for worse, right? As your wedding vows say, often. So for us, what we did on Valentine's Day is, and we've done this in the past, is we go to dinner as a family to Buffalo Wild Wings. And it's our nice little family tradition. And I give the girls a few little gifts, which is a tradition that my mom always did. And it's more like, it's not just like a piece of candy, but I give like little gifts, like actual, like maybe a little bag. Or this year I got T a sweatshirt from that has her cross country logo on it. And I got Jay a new lunchbox because she lost her lunchbox. Annoying, but T actually didn't go to dinner with us this year. It's the first time. She's in the height of her teenage years and she went out with a friend. So that's what we do. And like, maybe A will give me some flowers. He usually takes either J or T out with him to get the flowers, or sometimes he'll get me a little thoughtful thing. Like one year he gave me this stuffed cactus, which I love growing cacti and I love cactuses in general. And it was just so adorable and so thoughtful. And like, that's like, it has such a deep rooted meaning to me. So, like, when we talk about sex and all these other things, I don't know. That's not where I'm at in life. And do I feel sexy? Maybe not right now, but mostly because I've just been going through menopause and blah. But there are times that I feel pretty, but yeah, like my cheap thrills are less about sex and more about just like all the meaningful things that I have in my life and the meaningful people that I have in my life, like my family and my friends, like you, Muffy. So I'm curious, how do you get your cheap thrills? And what does it mean to you?
Ooh la la, Valentine's Day. 50 Shades of Grey. I never knew. Habs, I never knew. You've got me having a little cheap thrill right here. Um, oh, I love it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved everything you talked about. Yes, cheap thrills in our 50s. And of course, it's a great time to think about it mid-Feb with Valentine's Day just last week. It just brings to mind, right? Where do we get our cheap thrills in our lives at this age? Thanks for sharing a little bit about the enduring love that you have with A that is sort of its own cheap thrill. And I love the little cacti, so cute and right, so meaningful. I love that. Well, for me, I never outgrew Valentine's Day. I love Valentine's Day. I know it's a Hallmark holiday. And when I lived in Australia, they don't really do these Hallmark holidays. Like Valentine's Day is just like not a big deal, just like Halloween and like so many of the holidays that we do in America are just like not on. It was a little more in Canada because it's North America, but nobody does these Hallmark holidays as good as America, I have to say. And that's one of the reasons I love living in this country, is Valentine's Day can be as crazy and as big or as small as you want. And for me, it's always been just something I loved. I remember being in grade school and remember, decorating the box, and then everyone had to give everyone in the class a Valentine, right? And then someone would put like a lollipop in there, some special thing. I just loved opening that box. I remember feeling so hurt when like someone forgot me. And like they probably didn't mean to. And then that kid probably really hated me then. But it's just like I loved Valentines and making them and giving them. Of course, I never made my own because I am not like your girls who are so creative. I would just do the box ones. But I loved that, and I loved giving them. I gave them with all my heart, and I still do that. I must have written like 75 Valentines in the last week of January and sent them out immediately February 1st so people would have a Valentine all month. That has never changed for me. And then I remember in high school, there would always be the Valentine's Day dance, and I had to go to that. I had to have a date and go and, like, have dinner with somebody, and I was never one to have, like, necessarily a steady boyfriend. I dated a lot of people, a lot of guys, but never lasted for very long. But I remember one year when we made like the girls made their dates dinner, and then we went to the Valentine's Day dance, and it was so fun and so crazy. I remember making the dessert, and it was just a good time. So Valentine's Day dances had a lot of special meaning for me. Um, and of course, I just, as RK, my husband would say, every holiday is a big deal to you. So here we are, mid-February, and he knows that I like to do something to mark the holidays, to mark the birthdays. I don't really let them pass. I don't know if you ever watched that show, The Middle, which was about a family. Patricia Heaton was in it. I always liked it because I grew up in the middle of the country in Ohio, and it's sort of about a family in Indiana. And they always pass things like Valentine's Day or their birthdays. And then one year on one episode, they're like, we're not passing this. We're going to do all the holidays and all the birthdays on one day so we can mark it. This is why I do not pass on things. I decorate my home for Valentine's. When I lived in Seattle and had more room, I had a lot more decor than what I do right now. But the one box of Valentine's decorations I have, I get out, and it's a cheap thrill for me to decorate for the holidays, particularly Valentine's Day. It's very, very satisfying. And so, of course, RK asks, what do you want to do for Valentine's Day? Because he knows after 21 years of marriage and 22 years of being together, she wants to do something, or she wants something. I'm past those days where he has to guess. Although sometimes when he guesses, he does surprise me in the most wonderful way. But I think this year I asked for a particular type of chocolate that I want. And then we're going to go out for a caviar night in the city because they have caviar bars in New York City. And we had them in Seattle too, but there was only one, and it seemed to kind of close down after COVID. But here in New York, there's a bunch, and I just always wanted to go to a caviar bar. So I'm really, really excited about that. And we're doing it the week after Valentine's Day, so this coming up weekend, because we don't really like to go out on the actual weekend of Valentine's Day because it's just too, as you say, like new love out there and price fixed menus and things that we're just not into anymore. We might have been at one time. So we've kind of left those things behind. But we will go out. I'm sure he will probably bring me some flowers and probably get me that chocolate. And he's actually going to be away. He was away over the weekend in that he took the dog on a nose tracking competition. So, the second love after me for RK is the dog, R. So they do nose tracking competitions together. And this past weekend was one of them. So we weren't even together. But on actual Valentine's Day, what is actually not a cheap thrill, actually just an amazing thrill, is spending it with my little cousins, my third cousins who are ages 3 and 7. And their parents go out because they're much younger than us. So they're late 30s and they're going to go do the price fix menu and the whole nine like you do in your 30s. And I get to be with the kids and bring them bags of gifts and like just be with them and be Valentine-y with them. It is so fun. And it's such a thrill. So actually on Valentine's Day itself, that's where I like to be with these little ones. Who knew that I would evolve into that in my later years? So that's Valentine's Day. Yeah, I think RK and me, we're so busy in our lives here. Um, we really do appreciate being together in all the ways, and we're just connecting. But I think the I think it does evolve. I think it evolves out of early passion into early married into the life of being in your 30s and 40s and struggling with career and things you're doing. We never went the route of children, so we didn't have kind of that interruption to maybe our connection with new connections with children. We had pets, but I think we're pretty like connected, like always connected, no matter what's kind of going on. With SEX, we're always together, always in our hearts. And I just know that. He's a comedian in New York City and he's a radiologist by day. And like we don't spend actually in a given day a lot of time together. But our mornings, I get up with him at 5 a.m. because he starts work at 6, or supposed to, 6:30. And like that's our hour to kind of be together. And we don't really have the dinner hour, we have the breakfast hour. And that's a meaningful time to be together and share kind of our thoughts and how we slept and what's going on. I would say time away allows more passion to happen, like just getting out of town and being completely relaxed and not in our regular lives. And that doesn't often happen all around like Valentine's Day holiday or anything like that. So it's sort of more like along travel lines. Um, but it's middle-aged love. It was funny when you said something about you getting the thrill out of the simple things. And I immediately thought like getting out of bed and not feeling pain. And I get out of bed in the morning and I'm feeling pretty good, like body's kind of flexible and I'm not feeling anything in my back or my shoulders. I can just like hop out of bed. Like that's a cheap thrill. I'll say that. I'll also say that, I know the whole Me Too movement and women don't like men catcalling them or giving them compliments on the streets, and that's offensive. At my age, that is not offensive. It's like, go ahead and catcall. I invite it. It's like wonderful. It's like it makes me blush. It makes me, I don't know if it's just being Gen X, just being older, getting sick of the PC stuff, but like you take your cheap thrill where you can get it. I'll just say that. So I don't mind that at all. And you get a lot of that in New York City. I also thought about your connection with the wine guy. You're a little bit of a cougar there, right? Younger man with the older woman. Isn't that what they call it, a cougar? I get a cheap thrill out of listening to young people talk about their love life. I seem to have a lot of young people in my life. I think it's because RK is a comedian. I was taking acting lessons. I don't know, but I seem to have cultivated a lot of young people in my life, which is good because actually my mother always said to keep young, you need to have young people in your world. And I have all those. So sometimes I have dinner with these people and they talk about their love lives. And, like one person said to me that, I think they're just sleeping with people, all the time. But, what grosses her out is a man takes off his shirt and he's got all these moles all over his body. She can't stand to sleep with someone with moles. And so she was telling the story like, well, did you end up sleeping with him? She says, yeah, I took one for the group. Like, even though she doesn't want to be the guy with moles, she did still sleep with him. But like, I was just like, okay, like, I think you and I were talking about this. Maybe I told you about this because we were talking about things that like, we didn't like. I mean, for me, like thinking about love lives, I could never be with somebody who had a thick wrist. I mean, it's kind of weird. Just like this woman, young woman who's like, I mean, she's in her mid-30s. She's not that young, but she's like talking about moles on people. Like, if I have a guy who's got like a thick wrist, this is when I was dating. I was like, no way, it's not going to happen. But I would not take one for the team. It just didn't happen. So like, yeah, like I think that that's a bit of a cheap thrill hearing people talk about what they're getting up to and like remembering what I got up to. Um, I think that's kind of a cheap thrill. And luckily I have a past um that's colorful enough to be able to look back on all of that and think about that. I think uh not that I was trying for it, but I have a young friend, not that young, maybe like 33 man, um, who's a friend of mine. And like, we like to chat about all sorts of things. So I'll go over, well, I don't know, once a quarter maybe, and we'll have lunch together or coffee and just chat. Well, things that he's doing, things I'm doing. And he came to a Halloween party I had last year. And I was talking to him on my patio. And at some point, RK knocks on the window and is like, "Are you coming in?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And we were just talking, but I came in and then like 2 months later at a dinner party I was having here, RK says in front of these other 2 couples, he's like, "Well, you know, Muffy has her own little, her young guy that she's sort of into." But it's just like, are you jealous? But, having been with someone for 21, 22 years, I don't think it's that bad to have him be a little jealous. Because I'm like, "Oh, you're jealous of M." I mean, there's nothing to be jealous about because I'm not into M, but he is a friend and I enjoy spending time with him, just chatting. And like, I think there is something around that age difference between us. We have different perspectives on things that I share with this person and that he shares with me and we get along. That doesn't mean anything's happening there, but I thought it was interesting. I thought that was a little bit of a cheek drill for me to hear him jealous. What's that song? Jealousy. Na 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 na. Not a bad thing to have in your marriage 2 decades in. Oh, the other thing I was gonna say was romance novels. I think of romance novels these days, it's kinda like the Hallmark Channel. I don't really need to get a romance novel out anymore because if I put that a Hallmark Channel on, it's that strong woman from the big city goes back to the strapping, world guy who's gonna take her and, like, make a woman out of her. It's the same storyline. I mean, I think there are more details in the romance novels, and I think Hallmark's more like G-rated or maybe PG-rated. But I think, on these days, I don't really read romance novels, although I did. But now I, tune into the Hallmark Channel, and those shows are going all year round, not just Christmas time anymore. So I think there's some cheap thrill in that too. As far as like gambling or porn or food or all these things people like overindulge in for a cheap thrill, I'm not into any of those things. I kind of live a more balanced, life, but I can see how they could all become a bit of a cheap thrill. Um, I too love driving, not going over bumps at speed, but I love driving. I own a BMW. It's not a big one or anything, but they call it the ultimate driving machine. And I put those driving gloves on and ooh la la, Habs, ooh la la.
OMG, Muffy. I just had to crack up when you mentioned the Hallmark movies. A loves those shows. Like it's his cheap thrill. He loves, I think he just loves the innocence, the purity. I don't know, maybe he's old-fashioned. In some ways, I think he is. And he is an innocent guy. I mean, he has an innocence about him. So I just have to like share that when you mentioned the Hallmark movies, I was about to say it before you even said it. So yeah, I didn't even think about the Hallmark holidays kind of being a US thing, but you're right. And who knew? I didn't realize that like Valentine's Day wasn't celebrated in Australia and probably some other countries. I mean, I guess I never really thought about it, and if I did, maybe I would think, yeah, it's an American thing, but, funny enough, Valentine's Day is banned in some countries like Iran, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Uzbekistan. Yeah, so I guess I'm not living there because as much as I'm like, it's a commercial holiday, I still think it's kind of sweet. And I like the scent. I like the idea of having some of these sweet holidays and Hallmark holidays, because it makes the world go round, I think. So yeah, my cheap thrill is 50 Shades of Grey. I remember when I read that book, I was just like, oh my God, I was reading it up in Maine and there were people around, but I was just so enthralled. I had no idea where it was going at the beginning. And then when it did, I was like, oh my God, this is like a modern day romance novel. Like, talk about stepping it up a notch. Yeah, I do remember. I remember grade school and Valentine's Day and it just being so special with the boxes and getting all the little Valentine's Day cards. I have to say that Jay, now that she's in middle school, is kind of disappointed that they no longer have like those little parties in the classroom and they exchange Valentine's Day cards. That's kind of sad. I kind of wish they would. Like, everybody should do that. Maybe even as adults, we should have like decorate little Valentine's Day boxes and give it to each other cards. I mean, what's so bad about that? But anyways, I do remember that, and I remember it being a lot of fun. I don't remember whether or not I got Valentine's Day cards from everybody or there was somebody missing. It wasn't that important to me, but I can totally see where that would annoy you. I just like knowing you, Muffy. It's so apropos, and I mean that in the kindest of ways. You know, it reminds me, like, back in grade school for tea, I remember one year she had this friend, and the mom didn't like the idea of giving candy. So so she ended up having her daughter give like these mini chalkboards with chalk and some kind of writing on it. I just was like, oh, come on, just give candy. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, why rebel against giving candy? That's when you give candy on Valentine's Day and Halloween, Like, come on. That annoyed me quite a bit. I don't remember any Valentine's Day dances at my school, but I was very shy and naive in high school. And I had not had a very illustrious dating career. I haven't actually dated too many guys, funnily enough. I think in college, I kind of messed around. I'm sure there's another word for it now, and I bet my oldest daughter, T, could tell me, but I'm not gonna have that conversation right now. I mean, I will if she wants, but she doesn't really like to talk about her love life, so we'll leave that we'll leave that there. So yeah, I mean, I in my 20s when I was living in DC, I kind of knew I'd date somebody, and if it lasted it pretty much only lasted 3 months, and by the end of the 3 months, I knew, "Yeah, this guy's not really right for me." It's funny you were talking about not liking a guy with thick wrists and your friend who doesn't like a guy with a lot of moles on his body. Funnily enough, I don't care about the moles. I mean, I guess if they had a lot of moles, I don't think I would like it, or I wouldn't be very attracted to him, but to a guy with a lot of moles, but I don't like really hairy guys. It's interesting. A is not very hairy. He's never been very hairy. Like, I'm not saying he's not like alopecia, but he just doesn't have a lot of hair. And I like that. And I like a guy with like a decent butt. If like there's a guy that just like, and A has a decent butt. I mean, it's not like a huge butt. So I'm the opposite of the guys who like big butts. I'm the girl who likes, a butt. Who knew this conversation would go there? I also have to admit, I don't get like guys with a dimple in their chin. I don't know what it is. I mean, there might be one or two exceptions. I'm trying to think of like a famous actor that maybe I still like, but I don't like a dimple in the chin. I don't know. So yeah, I'm disclosing some bugaboos that I don't like. I guess the better word would be attributes in a man. Yes, I guess I am a cougar. You totally made me blush. And he kind of does make me blush, which is so funny. Yeah. I mean, you were talking about your friend who you like talking to, and he's a younger guy and are being a little bit jealous. I mean, yes, I agree. Jealousy is not always a bad thing. A little jealousy, I can be jealous. I can be jealous of A. And I think he knows that. But like, I think I can be jealous of him because I just feel like he's such a likable guy and he is such a kind of that innocence and vulnerability that like people don't see right away. And he's kind of fascinating and interesting. And so, yeah, I can be like, I often wonder, like, how did I snag him? So I will admit that. So yeah, I think getting away, I agree, travel does kind of ignite some passion because your everyday life is so busy, regardless of it, whether or not you have kids or you don't have kids. It's just life is super busy. I have to say, when we get away, it hasn't been very much when it's just the two of us because with the girls being younger, it's hard to find care for a long period of time or any amount of time. So a lot of our travel, our girls have come with us. So there's not a lot of sex happening there. But it does kind of reunite us, like even he and I, and then as a family. So yeah, there is kind of some cheap thrill in going away. We also like we're not really into gambling or you were mentioning that, and I just it reminded me of when A and I went it was, after New Year's or maybe around then, but I was pregnant with T, and I was, like, 8 months pregnant, so we couldn't really go very far, so we decided to go to Vegas. Both of us had never been before. I mean, it was winter, who knew that Vegas in the winter can be kinda cold? I was feeling very awkward, so there wasn't really a lot of sex going on there at that point, and neither of us like to gamble, and I'm pregnant, right? So I'm like, you're going through these gambling places, and there people are smoking and drinking. I can't do any of that. The smoke isn't good. I mean, we kind of watched a few people, and I think maybe A did a couple of tables, but not even. But the funny part of it is that we ended up going to a wax museum. A loves wax museums, and I kind of they've grown on me too. And so we went to the wax museum and we got our cheap thrills with like the various actors and actresses that we both like, and we took pictures with them, and like that was our cheap thrill. Um, in the gambling capital of the world. I too don't mind the cat call. Like you said, at this age, you get your cheap thrills where you can, and a little compliment can go a long way these days. And while I'm not really old fashioned, I do think a little bit of chivalry is like a good thing. When a guy holds the door open for me, I mean, that just means a lot. And when a guy doesn't, I'm also kind of like, like just little things. I mean, like A has never like walked around and opened my car door. I can do that. But I don't know. There's something about holding the door open that is very thrilling. And it's a cheap thrill at that. Hey, Habs. How's it going with your cheap thrills today?
I love this episode. I hope our listeners are enjoying this as well. I am so interested, listeners, to hear your cheap thrills that you get for yourself in life, just generally speaking. It's just fascinating. I also found it so interesting when you were talking about your dating life and how you sort of knew, 3 months in when you were dating somebody if it was like going to be a go or a no go. For me, one of my greatest cheap thrills is my past dating life. I loved dating. And so many women are like, oh, I don't want to play the field or I have to just be with one person. Like, no, you don't. But the funny thing was, I also was with one person. So I've had a lot of different dating experiences. In high school, I did, like my junior and senior year, I dated a captain of every sports team. I don't know why I did that. It kind of just turned out to be that way. I didn't think I intended to do it, but it happened. And I love it. It's a cheap thrill for me. I think, oh my God, those years I dated every captain of every sport team. At the same time, I started a relationship with somebody G at the age of 15. Yes, I was, what, 2 years younger than your daughter T. And I had that relationship for 11 years, mostly on again. It was on and off a bit in high school. That's when I was dating those captains of those teams. But we were basically on. It was like an 11-year relationship. By the time we broke up, I was sadder to say goodbye to G's mother than him. So I feel like I had an early marriage without the marriage. We never married. Of course, we thought about it, but we were just like two very wrong young people for each other. And I'm so glad we never made that mistake. And it would have been a terrible mistake. So I had this 11-year relationship. I also dated all these captains of the football team in high school. When I got done with that relationship when I was 26, I like popped out, but because I hadn't really dated since I was like 15 to 17 years of age with anyone else, like I had that mentality when I started dating in DC at the age of 26. So you can imagine like that was sort of a bumpy ride, but I had a great time dating between like the ages of 26 and 29 or 30. It's just so much fun. I mean, there was heartache too, of course, but like I liked playing the field. I liked different experiences with different people, different moments. And then at like 30, I went off to India and reconciled my biracial identity. And I just like threw my life open to the world and I dated men everywhere. From Italy to the UK to, of course, India to Australia. I was just like just global in how I dated. And of course, that's how I met RK. And then when we finally settled to get together, it was like, okay, had reclaimed my Indian identity. So I was like, do I want an arranged marriage or do I want kind of a Western, marriage? And I felt like I already had the Western marriage with G all the way back between the ages of 15 and 26. So, me and RK kind of arranged ourselves and gave each other 3 months to decide if we would marry each other. And we did. And, we've been married this April 22 years. So, I mean, it's just kind of like I've done a little bit of everything, right? Western kind of marriage from the age of 15, 26, an arranged kind of marriage, dating these captains of these teams in high school and then dating hard post high school, post G, when I was 26, having kind of love affairs all over the globe. I think that's why passion gets ignited when I'm somewhere off in the world. Because like, it's just cool. Like, I don't know, it's a cheap thrill for me to be somewhere else in the world experiencing passion. So actually, I think about my dating history or my past as very much a cheap thrill. Going like, that was living. That was good. That was good. It's time. It's no longer the time in my life now. But I had that time and I enjoyed that time and I never look back with any regret at all. So if you are listening to this and are wondering, should I play the field? Should I do this? Should I do that? Yeah, you should do it all. You should do it all. You will look back and have a wonderful, wonderful past to smile about. So I highly encourage women to own that part of themselves and date and experience far and wide. Yeah, I know. I couldn't live in a country either that didn't have Valentine's Day. I'm looking around my place right now and I'm seeing like my Valentine's Day candy and my cards and my pink this and my pink that and like red tulips. And it's just like, yeah, it was really hard living in Australia where there really wasn't a Valentine's Day. I think that some restaurants would like have a Valentine's Day special or something just to try and get people in. But, it just wasn't. And where I lived was in the Gold Coast, which was like a holiday town already. So people are already kind of celebrating their love or their passion, because they're on holiday or on vacation at the beach, so it was very, very, very low key. But, give me my Valentines. And yes, of course, I was very upset when I didn't get a Valentine from every kid in the class. And I still I think I sent like 70 Valentines. And I even bought a few last minute because I just like, oh, I didn't give this or that to somebody. So there's always another moment to do a Valentine for people. So I guess correspondence is a bit of a cheap thrill for me. Sometimes it's not so cheap, but I love to write real mail. Yes, I like that you enjoy 50 Shades of Grey. That came out. It came out a long time ago now. And I really, really had fun with it. And I think the whole, country and world did. It was just this kind of funny modern romance, as you say. And of course, that book was set in Seattle, even though the woman's like writing in the UK, I think. She set it in Seattle. So it was like, You can take a 50 Shades of Grey tour when you go to Seattle, just like you can take a Twilight tour when you go to the Twilight City on the peninsula out. I forget Forks. Forks, Washington is where Twilight took place. So you could take a Twilight tour, which is also kind of like modern vampire romance, and you could take a 50 Shades of Grey tour. And when the movie came out, that was such a hot and popular thing. So I just had to tell you, Habs, if you ever want to go to Seattle with me, we can take a 50 Shades of Grey tour. Have I taken that tour? I will never cop to it if I have. I have to say, one time in Seattle with 50 Shades of Grey, they did a spoof on that. I forget what they called it. It was funny. That wasn't 50 Shades of Grey. It was something like 50 Shades. 50 Shades, I think, of effed up or something. It was funny. It was like this spoof, like Titanic is right now. And we went to that, and it was absolutely hysterical because the story of that author is that, like, her husband, you'll appreciate this because you're a mom. Her husband and kids went away for a weekend, and she wrote it like in 48 hours. Talk about a cheap thrill weekend. And she was always dinged because it had like not very good grammar and her sentence structure, and all of it was just, well, you write in 48 hours. But no publishing house wanted to pick that up or touch it. But people like you and I just loved it. And it was like selling, like, I think she self-published it with millions of copies. So finally, traditional publishing came knocking and said, we'll give you a deal. But yeah, so this spoof on 50 Shades of Effed Up or something. Yeah, it was just so funny. It's like a middle-aged woman, someone like our age now, just throws her family out for the weekend and she just starts writing this thing about Christian Grey and what's her name? Anastasia. Oh my God, it was so funny. If you ever get a chance to see that spoof, you would love it so much, particularly because of our age. So that was definitely so cheap because we paid to get a ticket to go there. But I mean, it wasn't an expensive ticket, but like you'd pay some money to see this thing. But it was so funny for both men and women. I mean, I cannot even tell you how funny that was. So I think cheap thrills are all around us. All around us. We just have to kind of name them and see them as that. So this is kind of an exciting thing, or this is kind of like a fun thing, or I'm getting a little attention, or feeling a little something here, or, or this gives me a really good feeling, or, cheap or otherwise. So I think it's important to pay attention to, and at every age. And I think they think, like, as women hit menopause, as we've talked about, like, cheap thrills are over for women. I guess that's why we love that Sex and the City character. What was her name? Samantha. She was always the sexy one and kind of I thought always the older one of all of those gals. It was like having sex left, right, and center, an extreme version, right? And I think she was only in her like 40s, like 50s. I don't know. It's like no holds barred. What's going on? But we've still got it. We've still got it in whatever thrill we can get it, and we'll take it, right? Because that's what makes us young and fun and ooh la la, SEXY.
Hey, Muffy, I just had to take this last minute and say, ooh la la, you are quite the player in more ways than one. I'm curious, is RK a player? I had to thank you also for sharing about the 50 Shades of Grey spoof. I did not know that the author wrote it over the course of one weekend. I did know that it was based in Seattle, but I didn't know, kind of that backstory, so thank you. I have to say, it was quite the hot ticket at the time. I mean, I was getting people all over the place telling me, have you read that? Have you read that? You gotta read it. But not really saying what it was really about or, like, the behind the scenes. So, like, when I read it, I was, like, in the middle of the family room in Maine, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm reading this thing, and these people are around me. It was crazy. Yeah. Yep, gotta get your cheap thrills where you can, Muffy. On that, I'm off to get my cheap thrills now. Just kidding. Thanks for tuning in to Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy as we talked this week about our own cheap thrills. And yes, listeners, I am so curious about what your cheap thrills are. Feel free to drop us a line and let us know. You can follow us on Instagram and comment there at Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy. Till next time.